So I'm going to give the disclaimer up front. I am not an AI expert. And so when preparing for this, I told Aldo that, and I said, please, understanding that, yes, we're in Silicon Valley. Yes, a lot of people know what AI is. Dumb it down so that I can understand. And I think he's going to do that very well. But Aldo, really excited to be up here. Have a couple of questions so that you all know we are going to have a Q&A as a part of this. Aldo is a foremost expert on AI. Aldo also has given the quick warning that he is going to be honest in such a way that you won't read in somewhere like VentureBeat or TechCrunch. And so don't quote him unless you want them to.
Up to you.
Up to you. Okay. So, Aldo, breaking it down to the basics, give us a definition of AI. What is artificial intelligence? It's a buzzword that's thrown around a lot. I feel like everyone in this room, we all have a cursory understanding of it. You have a far more in-depth understanding. Obviously, you've done 4 companies now. Give us a little overview on what it is and what it isn't.
So, like you, Eric, I'm not an expert in AI. I've just been using it for the past 2 decades. It's very different. The concept of artificial intelligence is, for the lack of a better term, an ethereal concept, right? So at the end of the day, when you want to, I don't like to use the word dumb it down, because frankly, anyone that says that they understand artificial intelligence doesn't understand that they are artificially intelligent, okay? So, pardon the pun. So in a cursory example, artificial intelligence, and I want to make sure that I go with the theme of philanthropy. I just want to be clear, this is not a talk on AI. Even though we are in the heart of Silicon Valley, I want to make sure it's applicable to your daily lives as you make decisions throughout, your careers or your legacy, so on and so forth. So AI basically is the emulation of biological intelligence. Okay, it doesn't have to be human intelligence, but anything biological or organic. So you're trying to emulate it. It's as simple as that. Okay, it's not fancy algorithm. It is fancy algorithms, fancy models, all of those things. But the reason why they say it's artificial, it's because it's synthetic or non-organic. It's just non-organic. So.
There we go. I think that's a phenomenal definition. I don't think I've heard that one before. So with that, understanding that it's an emulation of biological intelligence, what do people get wrong about AI and how it works? We have ChatGPT out there, which we will touch on a little bit in a minute, where people are like, oh, I can ChatGPT this, or I can throw this to AI and it's magically going to get done. And that's obviously not how it happens. Give us a little bit of an understanding of that. How does AI actually work, and what do people get wrong?
So Eric, I love audience participation. So I'm looking at a bunch of people here, and I'd love your honest feedback. How many people use artificial intelligence today? Raise of hands. Okay. And how many people use ChatGPT? Okay. How many people have cell phones? Artificial intelligence, or any time a machine augments a process, that's called technology, right? People often get wrong what people often get wrong about AI is it's new. It's actually not. It's been a ubiquitous part of your life since the 50s. Who remembers writing 1 + 1 on a piece of paper at kindergarten? I don't know if I've met anyone who hasn't done it who is at least here in the continental United States. What am I trying to say? 1 + 1 is something we do manually. A calculator does that really, really fast. Is that artificial intelligence? No, it augments a ubiquitous part of what we used to do manually. Artificial intelligence is scary not because it's new technology, but because of the rate at which it is now being used and adopted, right? And people don't know this. It's literally in everything you do right now, whether or not you like it. That's the problem. If you have a cell phone, who uses spreadsheets? Who uses a word processor? That's technology. So I'm a very big student of history. So it's also I want to put that into perspective, Eric. It's that people think that AI is new. It's been around longer than like since the 50s. Alan Turing, John von Neumann. It's meant to augment a process that we do organically using something synthetically. So it's touched our lives. Someone just rebranded it lately to say this is, robots, Terminator, so on and so forth.
I love that example. And with the rebrand that's gone on, there's also been a lot bigger use. Everyone here has a cell phone. If you have a flip phone, I would be a little surprised. But if you have a Google Assistant, you have a Siri, you're using it in your daily life. But something that has started shifting, and want to tie into the themes that were discussed earlier in Dame Sheila's presentation and things that Anne and Pamela said, is that AI is transforming us, but it's also transforming the planet. There's a significant ecological impact. Alan touched on this a little bit for the ChatGPT calculations, but in training these new data models that are used for what we're all coming to see again as artificial intelligence or the synthetic enhancement, these models take thousands of gallons of water to cool the data centers that are used to train them. And the amount of electricity in the data centers is enormous. What can you, in understanding also that electricity is also a finite resource that we have to pay for, what do you think can be done to reduce the ecological impact, reduce the water consumption, reduce the electricity consumption that really is coming around? And maybe if you could give, I know that you're well versed in this, give a little bit of insight to the audience on the amount of electricity that's going to be needed to run these models in the future.
So in my most recent company, essentially, I will not self-promote. I refuse to do that. But I started that company specifically because of two stark facts. Here's the first one. The state of Iowa consumed 1.6 billion gallons of water to cool the supercomputer that runs OpenAI's ChatGPT. Let's do the math there. 1.6 billion gallons of water. And let's think about sub-Saharan Africa and the lack of water there. Okay, that's a sobering fact. I've been to data centers and they do need cooling. I was part of the entire Bitcoin mining craze, and those were hot machines. And then when I saw that Bitcoin mining was, the emissions were equivalent to Greenland's, or is that one of Denmark's country emissions, I stopped. Okay, so that's a sobering fact. The other sobering fact, Eric, is a very distinguished scientist over at UC San Diego said and projected that by 2035, there are two things that can happen. And everyone says, they talk about artificial general intelligence, right? Where you have a indistinguishable synthetic thing. He says that's actually not going to happen. What's going to happen is the energy consumption of all data processing and artificial intelligence will equivalent the world's energy production. Okay, let's take a pause there for 3 seconds. No, make it 5. Take that in. 2035. Energy production of the entire Earth will equivalent the requirements of these machines. There has to be something wrong with that. That's totally unsustainable. So I know that I'm saying this because we are in a panel of philanthropy, and you are thinking about how to impact future generations, Gen 4, Gen 7, Gen 12. We want to create a world where you can do things sustainably. That's very important, Eric. But without sacrificing its benefits for us. And, again, there are many ways you can do this, right? There are many different alternatives, many different technologies. A lot of them very hard to understand. My job is to translate very hard to understand technologies and utilize them here. Now, this is a shameless plug. I'm only mentioning what I do in the context of answering a question about energy consumption. But there are alternative ways of not just software, hardware, algorithms. But together, there are ways that we found out that we could use 6,000 times less energy to do the exact same artificial intelligence task. Right? Ain't that nice? Right? And you're utilizing 30 times less resources to do the exact same thing. Only because I know of people that questioned, why do we have to make up these data centers that run this gigantic arithmetic crunching? These GPUs you hear are gigantic arithmetic crunching devices. That's all they do. And where did we get that inspiration? Quite simply, folks, quite simply. And this is my last point. When you think about the most intelligent thing we know right now, let's be a bit human-centric, but it's us, the human brain. The human brain consumes 20 watts of energy to have a great discourse, to listen to wonderful speakers, and to think and remember what we take away. ChatGPT utilizes many numbers, right? But here's the consensus. 20 billion watts per hour. And it's not nearly as close as to the conversations I've had with Eric. Something's wrong.
And although you can correct me on this, and so to put it into a different perspective, we talk about energy consumption. Most people here aren't engineers. They may not know about what the energy consumption actually means. So to put it into cost, the cost to run a data center is $10,000 an hour. And so what you're telling me, if it's 6,000 times cheaper, and I'm not ChatGPT, I'm not going to get this right. And so you're saying that we can get it down, if we can get the cost down to, let's say, 10 cents, 2 cents an hour, then it becomes a much more sustainable model that we can do. And the reason why that's brought up is solely just because as a part of philanthropy, Dame Sheila just brought up the importance of investing back in the earth and being ecologically friendly, going and being good stewards of the resources that we have. And so it sounds like for what you're doing now, and I know that you don't want to do a shameless plug, I'm happy to shamelessly plug for you. But you're really solving not just an artificial intelligence problem, but also an ecological problem in addressing that.
We refer to it as a biospherical problem, right? I try not to talk about ecology because it just refers to a natural environment. One of the biggest, how do I say this, gripes, at least the organization that I founded, is there's this, when you hear about every single AI company talk about propelling humanity forward, what is wrong with that statement? You hear, I'm not going to name names, but every single AI company right now that's raised billions of dollars, they've said, let's propel humanity forward. And I want to tie it into what Eric said about, the ecosystem. Yes, we will propel humanity forward, but at the expense of everything else. Right? but at the expense of everything else. I know this for a fact. So what at least I've taken, again, I will not name my company, nor will I do shameless plug, because it's not why I started it. It's not why I'm here today. I'm here today to talk to influential people. They want to start asking questions about why is it that, yes, you propel humanity forward, but at the expense of everything else? Why do we need to create these gigantic, ginormous computing systems? Well, there are alternatives to do it. And why can't you get the inspiration from the best inspiration possible for intelligence? Biology. Right? So, that's why I named my company the Latin word for alive. That's the best place to find the most efficient form, at least right now, of intelligence. Why? Because we don't need, humans, we don't need 20 billion watts of energy. We probably need to eat 3 times a day. I eat once a day. But it's not for everyone. That's my point. And I'm so happy to be in front of people today that really care about future generations. Because this AI party is not going to continue at the rate we are consuming the Earth. And again, I'm not a climate activist. I'm not. I just see the writing on the wall, and it's headed there.
We promised you it would be something you wouldn't read in TechCrunch, and I don't think that anyone in TechCrunch has ever written this. Okay, I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and then we're going to let you all ask questions, and so start thinking them, and do not ask Siri or Google. They need to be original. And Jacqueline will go and carry around a microphone for people to do this. And we really do want a lot of audience participation. But we've been talking a lot about philanthropy, Aldo. Mm-hmm. So your first question that I have is, do you know cases where AI has been used in philanthropy successfully? It's in understanding that there was the rebrand in recent years, and so since the rebrand has occurred, do you know of any test cases where it's been used well?
First of all, a shout out to Dame Sheila. If you look at her workbook, in the back there, she has mentioned how many successful family offices have utilized not just advanced artificial intelligence, but blockchain. So I encourage you. Dame Sheila, what page is that? That's like at the last set of pages, correct? So I will not pretend to know more than she does about how AI and philanthropy is. But just to let you know, one of our first, we have an AI ethics department in our company. They were my first hires. AI ethics, and I had them research, and I have to read it because it's I cannot commit it to memory. Give me 1 second.
That's fine. I hope the audience is still thinking of your questions.
All right. Okay. So all credit to whatever it is I'm going to say belongs to the team that, the ethics AI. These people have made their PhDs on AI and ethics. So true experts. So what you can really see are 3 major trends, right? You've got these large global nonprofits, right? And you've got the International Fund for Agricultural Development, the IFAD. Essentially, this is an organization that empowers, how rural folks handle food scarcity, right? They have a project called Project Athena that utilizes an advanced form of model to basically optimize the project design and implementation. It's actually pretty awesome. The other one is, of course, if you think of the biggest initiative around the world right now that does philanthropy and artificial intelligence, it's the UN's AI, hashtag AI for good. So it's the biggest resource right now where AI is being used for philanthropy, so on and so forth. In fact, they have the largest AI for Good Summit happening in Switzerland in a few months, which I will be attending as well. So this is probably the most resource-rich that we've seen so far. And of course, there are global initiatives from, of course, the World Health Organization, the United Nations, and the International Intellectual Property Office. So that's important on a very, very global scale. For large tech companies, you can hear your Googles, your Microsofts, and your IBMs. For Google, they have specific partnerships with companies like, I don't know if you've heard of Give Directly. So essentially, it's another one of, I think it's a crowdfunding platform that basically gives to people with extreme poverty, so on and so forth. And Google and Give Directly have made several joint partnerships to optimize the matchmaking. So you will see themes here like matchmaking to find causes that individuals care about. Microsoft and UNICEF have also worked on several AI-assisted philanthropic efforts, specifically on education for developing countries. And they've done this quite significantly. They're very impactful. I know this because of, I was born and raised in the Philippines. And of course, IBM Watson plus the American Cancer Society, something I know just a fair and about being the chief executive of a cancer company for over 7 years. Looking at different types of phenotype information, genotype information to understand causes and treatments for cancer. So it's rampant is what I'm trying to say. And of course, there are startups like Pamela's or organization like Pamela's company. I don't think she's here. There she is.
There she is.
Which basically help match make causes, right? You can be philanthropic, but you don't have to be a millionaire, right? I think there are several platforms right now that you can give $25. I think up to again, I'm not an expert at this. Pamela is an expert at this. That will match you to a cause you like. So that utilizes artificial intelligence, and there's just so much more. So.
I love it. That's wonderful. Okay. You've been warned 3 times now, and it's time for the Q&A. Aldo will answer any question that you ask, and he will answer it to the best of his ability. So go ahead and
Okay, we have our first question over here.
As long as it's not confidential.
Just quickly, I've heard, I can't substantiate it, that it's being actively used in targeting by both sides in the Ukraine war. And when you get into something being used for military purposes, then the resource constraint kind of gets put aside as people want power and they want to win. I'm asking for you to comment about that. Is this the next nuclear bomb kind of point in history where one side can basically outthink the other? Thank you.
Controversial. Very controversial. So let's talk about history for 5 seconds, right? The history of just human nature. The reason why I'm mentioning that is when artificial intelligence has multiple use cases, just like the internet has multiple use cases, just like blockchain. And for those of us that remember 1994, 1995, 1996, the first use cases in the internet were the unsavory ones, right? Salaciousness, right? Some of the first use cases of the blockchain were Silk Road, if those of you that remember Silk Road. It is a deep web, illicit, illegal substance e-commerce marketplace. Human nature suggests that anything we can get our hands on can be used for good and can be used for bad. Now, let me qualify what good and bad is. It's a very relative term, and that's a very complicated and loaded statement, what good and bad means. It's relative. So what am I trying to say? Artificial intelligence will be used to predict the next cures for cancer. It will also be used to harm. Unfortunately, I am not afraid to speak of this because it's true. Historically, that's what we've done. Swords have been used to harm. They've been used to defend. They've also been used for scarecrows. So I err on the side of understanding how to wield something like this. Now, the reason why AI right now may be scary, again, is the velocity of which you perceive it's affected your life, right? And I want to answer an elephant in the room, which is it takes jobs away. And this is like every CEO will never talk to you about that. I will. Because I want to reframe the question and that answer not to the removal of jobs, but artificial intelligence or any advanced technology throughout history, in human history, drastically changes the way we are productive and the way we work. Let me give you an example. Who remembers checkout lines that were not self-checkout? Right?
Yes.
I remember going to, at least those of us that still go to groceries, right? So these checkout lines that you see there, now there are self-checkout lines. The big complaint was you took jobs away from cashiers. Because now you have one person that has to make sure these machines are still clunky to this day, by the way. There's one or two people still, having to put in their credentials saying that yes, I am over 18 and I can buy these things. Yes, I get carded all the time for buying like stuff, and I'm like, come on, right? I am 45. What am I trying to say, right? These machines are manufactured somewhere. It's created jobs. The software engineers that make the software that run these self-checkouts, they work, right? And then you've got all of these people that service it, so on and so forth. The question isn't, is it going to replace the jobs? It's going to literally change the way we are productive. Even me as a chief executive, an AI apparently has outperformed me in decision making already. Let's just put that into context. Again, history and human nature. So, sir, I did not directly answer your question because there isn't one. Anyone that pretends to know, I'm so sorry. But I wanted to tell you my thoughts. Hopefully it was satisfactory.
Okay, anybody next? Another question? Yes, Deanne.
I can't just talk loud.
Thank you.
This is about your studies or your discoveries about breast cancer. I am so thrilled just because, in our business, it's primarily women and a lot of women. And we get tragedy notices like daily about I've just been notified or this is what I'm going to go through and I had to come home because this is what I'm going through. I would like to know that there is hope out there. And so give us hope. Because you just said AI isn't going to cure breast cancer. And I absolutely love that.
Well, I'm happy to tell you about the third company. So just when I think about philanthropy, it's doing good for several generations, right? Some people think that it is a profit or non-profit. I think for me, if I can do net good, that's very important. So the previous company, just to let you know, and by the way, if you want to know more about the previous company and more on cancer, my associate at the back over there is also a venture partner in a fund. He knows 30 years worth of cancer in information, just spanning many things. So whatever I'm going to say, he knows 60 times more. Anyway, so what we've seen essentially when you utilize artificial intelligence and in just healthcare in general, it is the next bastion of serious investigation and investment. So the company that I co-founded called Interven, I can mention that because I'm no longer the chief executive of it, with vested interests, right? It came from a woman professor at Stanford who I met in 2016, and she was talking about cancer being a dynamic disease, meaning it happens to you through life, right? Not everyone with the genes has cancer. With cancer genes develops cancer, like the BRCA gene, which predisposes you to both breast cancer and ovarian cancer by at least 3 or 4 times. But not everyone with that gene presents with cancer. Long story short, of course, we started that company, and in 2022, she won the Nobel. I don't know if you heard about that. She received the Nobel. Yeah, she did. My point being, the only reason why you could unlock these novel layers of biology is by the utilization of artificial intelligence. Before this, quite frankly, it was impossible to understand the human glycoproteome. It's a big term, I know, but it basically represents these sugar structures that exists within all of us, actually. 80% of you you're glycosylated. It's the most dynamic thing you can understand about yourself and you can target. So that's what that company does. My point being, I really care about this because my mother, she had breast cancer, and I have several relatives. Some of them want to remain, of course, unmentioned only because they don't want to be branded as the person with cancer. I understand it. So there's so much hope. But investment needs to go to the right place, measuring the right thing. Cancer is a dynamic disease. It's not a static disease. It develops because of nutrition, absolutely. It develops because of lifestyle, exercise, absolutely. You are predisposed to it, yes. If you have the BRCA gene, you need to be screened for breast cancer. You utilize AI to put all of that together. So AI can be really utilized for good. But you also have to be measuring the right things. The same way it can be utilized in warfare.
Thank you so much. Eric, do we have time for one more question? Okay,
Yes.
awesome. Anybody in the audience have another question? Yes.
Aldo, thank you, and Eric, great job. Very refreshing. Really appreciate it. It's this is stuff you don't hear everywhere when you go listen to people talk about AI. I am a firm believer that currently in this world we are severely lacking in good leadership. And you even heard Dame Sheila Driscoll talk about leadership and succession planning and education and training and development and all of that stuff. Aldo, your thoughts about AI, how AI can be utilized to develop a society of good leaders. I mean, look at just our government today, our politics, but around the world, your thinking is very different than most people I've heard talk about AI. So I want to hear your thoughts about leadership and how AI can be utilized to develop really good leadership.
I'm obsessed with the concept of leadership. I am. So yesterday, I was actually at a book launch with my executive coach. She launched her book. It's called a shameless plug for her. Is that coaching or leadership revolution, right? What is my big takeaway from that? She's been a coach for over 40 years, and she's coached Fortune 5, Fortune 500, Fortune 100, and all the way to several billion-dollar CEOs. And one thing she said to me, and she said during that panel, struck me. She says, the leadership rubric, schema, within organizations in the 80s is the exact same thing that they have right now. And that was like, oh my word. Leadership is a dynamic and evolutionary process, right? And when I thought about it, wow, leadership hasn't changed because leaders don't want to change. One of the big things she talks about in leadership, and I strongly believe in, is if you can't serve, you can't lead. If you aren't willing to pick that piece of paper on the floor, you can't lead. The problem is right now we have, there is this dearth of leadership, meaning, people being put in the right, putting the suboptimal person in the right place because of interests, so on and so forth. AI can absolutely work with that. In fact, we've used that to filter through candidates. So for one of my current company's searches for an executive, I put a random LinkedIn post out with like 600 applicants. There was no time for us to go, through each one. And, there are things that I look for in a leader, and none of them are spoken in their resume. I'm happy to tell you more about that specific algorithm that I used, but a lot of these things are salient attributes of human beings rather than the professional person. And people that know me know me well. When I interview, I don't read your resume. I read you. Because you, if I can work with you, then I can unlock you, and you can do wonders. It's a very different, I have a very different semi-annual performance review. My number one question is, have you grown? The number two is, have you surprised yourself? Very different again. But AI, there are many ways. Again, AI is a function of applying computing intelligence to disparate data sources. And there are many data sources you can get on LinkedIn. There are many data sources you can get on psychometric tests, right? It's actually not that hard. But again, I'm not an AI expert. I'm a practitioner of 20 years, right? Anyone that says that they understand what artificial intelligence, they need to have conversations with people with PhDs in complex systems and neuroscience, because they disagree with people that say it's AI. So, did I answer your question about leadership? I'm happy to always help people that want to promote leadership that is apropos to this generation and the next.